Project finances aren't anybody's favourite topic unless you're a finance director. And estimating is one of the greatest challenges anybody faces in a project environment because we are assailed by biases and in an environment of uncertainty. But we're going to tackle it anyway because in this video I'm going to look at how to estimate project costs. Before I start looking at how to make our estimates, I want to highlight one of the real problems we face as project managers and leaders. And that's what I call the estimating knife edge. The knife edge separates the two competing pressures we have to deal with whenever we're making estimates of cost or indeed of time. On the one side of the knife edge is the pressure, the pull even, from our clients, from our bosses, from our sponsors and from our stakeholders to minimise costs or indeed to minimise the duration of a project to get it done as quickly and as cheaply as we possibly can. On the other side of the knife edge is the pull in the opposite direction to include as much cost, as much contingency, as much time as we possibly can to reduce the risk of cost or schedule overruns, to give us as project managers the best possible chance of delivering what we've promised, when we promised it, and to the budget that we committed. And you are always going to be walking along that knife edge, trying to balance those two competing pulls. The process of project cost estimation needs to start with understanding the scope of the work you need to do, and the tool for that is a work breakdown structure. Once you have your work breakdown structure, you can estimate the time it will take to deliver each component of work. And from that, you can allocate people into the roles to do the work, and when you combine the time it will take with the cost of each of those resources, that starts to build up a cost estimate for the work that it will take. But there are other resources as well. And for each piece of work, you can also overlay the materials and the equipment and the assets that you need to do that piece of work and to put in place cost estimates from those. The fundamental tool for building a cost estimate is a work breakdown structure, which you convert into a cost breakdown structure. So what are likely to be the sources of cost that we need to build into our estimates? Well, for many projects, the single largest cost is people. And these are your staff, your contractors, and your consultants. Each will come with a different methodology for calculating it, and bear in mind that some organisations do not account for the cost of their own staff, seeing them as a completely sunk cost. As a project manager, even if my client organisation doesn't wish to account for the cost of its staff, I always like to calculate it to give a true picture of how much the project is costing them. Next are real estate assets, property, facilities, offices, warehousing. All of these costs are large. And there are other assets besides property. And in estimating these, you may need to treat them as capital costs, or you may be able to treat them as revenue costs if you're going to lease or hire them in some way. Then we've got non-capital costs, revenue costs, things like materials and components. We've also got licenses, because a large part of many projects now involves software which needs to be licensed, whether it's the project management software tools or software that is part of the thing you're creating as a project. And finally, there are the financing costs, things like interest, foreign exchange, and insurances. So, what are some of the techniques that you can use to estimate? I'm going to offer you 6 basic estimating methods. And the first is an order of magnitude estimate. The idea of starting at the top and thinking about the big chunks and the approximate amounts that each of those are going to cost to produce a figure that is very round. If your project is going to be in the millions, then each of these sections may only be estimated to hundreds of thousands. If your project is going to be in the tens of thousands, then each of these components may be estimated to the nearest thousand. Order of magnitude costs will give you a sense of how big your project is, and therefore some of the key elements of how much detail you're going to need to satisfy your client, your boss, your sponsor. The next method is to look at past projects and similar examples, technically known as reference class forecasting. You're forecasting or estimating the costs based on known examples that are comparable. But even when you do find comparable examples from the past, look at where there will be systematic variations between the past example and your present example. And of course, the most obvious one is cost inflation. If something cost $100,000 10 years ago, there's a good chance it's going to cost $150,000 today. The next method is called parametric forecasting, what I like to call rule of thumb forecasting. If we know that one worker can lay 100 bricks an hour, then if we know we need to lay 200,000 bricks, we can work out how many hours of work. And if we know we're going to fit it within a certain amount of time, that tells us how many people we're going to need. And if we know the daily rate of an average bricklayer, we've got all the data we need to make the calculation of the time cost. So parametric forecasting takes key numbers and multiplies them and adds them in a logical, mathematical way. The next method is to ask for bids or tenders to find out how much people are prepared to do the work for, and to use that as the basis of your estimate. Now, one would think that if you get a firm tender, that will give you the firm cost, but not all bids are based on fixed cost, and so you're going to need to build in some assumptions. And of course, there may be contract variations along the way, so you'll need to pack contingency into any estimates, even if you've got a fixed price bid. The next is catalogues and pricing tables. These are great working with your parametric forecasting methods. If you can draw down comparable data from published catalogues, from published pricing tables, you've got a great resource for building up your estimates. And finally, a great way to get really good data is to build a sample or a test or a pilot or a prototype. You can calculate the actual cost of doing that and use that as an input into your estimate for the bigger full production version. And of course, the secret to good estimating is to combine as many of these techniques as you can. And if you build an estimate, but it really matters how robust that estimate is, what about using a red team to either tear your estimate apart and look for faults, or better yet, to build their own parallel estimate and compare the two done in different ways by different minds with different approaches? You'll learn a lot by finding out why one team has done it one way and another has done it another way, and the first team got answer A, the second team got answer B. By comparing the two and understanding those differences, you'll be able to generate a better estimate. Always, always, always add contingency to your estimates. And my guidance is always not just to add one single contingency figure, but to look at the different work streams or the different functional components of your project or the different phases, and to look at the different levels of uncertainty associated with each of those based on their characteristics and what's in them. And therefore you may add 10% contingency to one work stream because it's fairly familiar, fairly well understood technology, but another work stream may be not using off-the-shelf components, maybe doing something we've not done before, and you may choose to put something like 40% contingency into that work stream. And when you combine all of those contingencies, then you'll get a robust project contingency. Finally, when you've got your estimates and you've got your contingency, it's time to build them into a cash flow. That way you can see how expenditure will flow out of your project and hopefully revenue into your project, if appropriate, over time. And if it's a long project and therefore the cost of interest and the effects of inflation are going to be significant, that needs to be what's called a discounted cash flow that takes into account those changes. And we have a video answering the question, what is a discounted cash flow, that you can watch. And of course, once you've got your cash flow and your budget, you've got the basis for building your business case. Because your business case is nothing more than a comparison between all of the costs that you just estimated and all of the benefits, which is a whole separate exercise. Take a look at our videos on business case for more information. So cost estimating, it's uncertain, it is difficult, but there are tools and techniques to help you. Understand the different elements that go into your estimate and the different approaches you can take, and you will be able to produce a reliable estimate for your project. Please give us a thumbs up if you like this video. There's loads more great project management videos to come, so please subscribe to the channel, and why not hit the bell so you don't miss any of it. And in the meantime, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.